Rumor, PLA Major General takes own life. Xi Jinping signs presidential order, hard times to return. Hebei little pink starves in tears, can defend Diaoyu Islands but cannot defend own land. Who will rescue 1.4 billion hostages in communist China? World's largest naval exercise commences, targeting the CCP. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Rumor, PLA Major General takes own life. Immediately after the Chinese Communist Party authorities reported on June 27 that two former ministers of defense, Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe, had been indicted, facing charges related to accepting bribes, rumors emerged on Platform X stating that Major General Geng Liaoyuan, the former head of the CCP's General Staff Political Department, had taken his own life at home that same night at 8 p.m., drawing international attention. Up to now, the authorities have not released any information regarding an investigation into Geng Liaoyuan or his death. If confirmed, Geng would represent the first case of taking one's own life in the CCP military forces this year. According to publicly available information, Geng Liaoyuan, who is from Qi County in Hunan Province, had a long career within the Joint Staff Department of the Central Military Commission, CMC. This is the highest-level military organization responsible for the operational command of the People's Liberation Army, PLA. He held various roles, among them as a member of the CCP Central Disciplinary Inspection Committee. Regarding the news of Geng Liaoyuan taking his own life at home, numerous internet users have commented, "That's extremely ruthless, surpassing even the CCP generals executed by the Japanese. The battle has not yet started, yet we are already losing so many generals. The position of CCP general is even more hazardous than that of Russian generals. A Stalin-esque purge and physical extermination are unfolding nakedly before the entire world." Other netizens said, "Without a robust system, you can't completely eliminate corrupt officials." This reflects both the limitations of Xi's intelligence and the Communist Party's intentions. It's all just a show for the public. In recent years, the Chinese Communist Party authorities have persistently carried out purges within the military, leading to numerous reports of officers taking their own lives. However, such information is often suppressed by official channels. Last July, as reported by the paper, Major General Wu Guohua, former deputy commander of the Rocket Force, passed away on July 4, 2023, in Beijing, after failing to respond to medical treatment. 2 days after his death, news regarding Wu Guohua spread across mainland social media platforms. Major General Zhang Xiaoyan, a senior officer to Wu, disclosed through a social media post that Wu Guohua had taken his life in the third-floor bathroom of his home, citing significant work-related stress and unharmonious family relations as reasons. It is noteworthy that both Wu Guohua and Geng Liaoyuan held positions within the CCP's General Staff Department, which was divided in 2016 into 7 parts, including the Central Military Commission's Joint Staff Department. In another case, on September 13, 2016, the mainland reading platform Dujiao released an exclusive report on its official Weibo stating, 70th Anniversary Parade Deputy Commander Major General Chu Rui took his own life. Subsequently, 4 guards were reportedly arrested. Earlier reports from the South China Morning Post cited 2 military sources from the CCP stating that Chu Rui, who also served as the deputy director of the 9.3 Parade Leadership Group's office and was the deputy director of the Operations Bureau of the CCP Central Military Commission's Joint Staff Department, was detained by military disciplinary officers at the end of July. Should the reports of Chu Rui's taking his own life be verified, this would mark the first instance of such an event occurring during detention amid the military's anti-corruption campaign. Since the 18th CCP National Congress, several military generals have ended their lives while in a state of freedom, unlike Chu Rui, who took his life under strict surveillance. Media reports indicate that in 2016 alone, at least 4 CCP generals took their own lives and 3 generals mysteriously disappeared shortly after receiving promotions. According to Cheng Ming, a Hong Kong magazine, from the start of the anti-corruption campaign at the CCP's 18th National Congress in 2012 to 2016, there have been 1,235 incidents of party, government, and military officials taking their own lives, resulting in 782 deaths. Xi Jinping signs presidential order, hard times to return. Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping signed a presidential decree on June 28, stating that the Rural Collective Economic Law will be implemented starting May 1 of the following year. This led to concerns about the possibility of another severe famine occurring. This is the inaugural Rural Collective Economic Law enacted by the Chinese Communist Party. Prominent state-controlled media have extensively covered this legislation, with outlets like the paper even publishing editorials about it. Key points highlighted by netizens include the establishment of a legal entity called the Rural Collective Economic Organization, distinct from village committees. This organization is tasked with collective economic functions, primarily the management and operation of collective assets. Its main objective is to protect collective property from encroachment and simultaneously foster the development of the collective economy. Many people speculate that Xi Jinping intends to reintroduce the people's communes. For example, some say, simply put, if the economy collapses and rural people revolt again, what happens with the rural areas surrounding the cities? By using the Rural Collective Economic Organization as a pretext to strictly control land, food, and personnel, it essentially revisits the communal dining halls of the people's communes. It seems we are returning to the communal dining system era. In one phrase, the era of eating grass has arrived. In history, communal dining system, or also called big pot rice, were prevalent during the people's communes and the Great Leap Forward, which directly led to a massive famine from 1958 to 1962. Despite optimal weather conditions, the famine devastated China, with countless deaths from starvation. Although the CCP has hidden the true figures, historical research estimates that the number of deaths ranged from 20 to 30 million, possibly more. In the past 2 years, China has repeatedly faced unprecedented natural disasters, including floods and extreme droughts, negatively affecting annual crop yields. The poor economic situation further impacts the ability to import food internationally. If Xi Jinping begins to implement the people's communes in rural areas, there is a widespread fear of another severe famine. Independent critic Kai Shinkun commented sarcastically, "The good news has caught people unprepared." Many believed it impossible to return to a collective economy. Yet, Xi Jinping is methodically pulling China back to the era of Mao Zedong, with absurdities such as early requests and late reporting also in planning, heralding the return of familiar hardships. Self-media commentator Zhang Tianliang noted, if Xi Jinping reverses course at the third plenary session and even restores the collective economy, he is essentially seeking his own downfall. This is because contemporary society relies on monetary investment for infrastructure like roads, bridges, airports, buildings, and data centers. Without ongoing investment, everything collapses. Moreover, the CCP needs substantial funds for maintaining social stability and military expenditures. Without adequate finances, Xi Jinping's control forces will be crippled, potentially jeopardizing his regime as civil resistance intensifies and becomes unmanageable. Hebei Little Pink starves in tears, can defend Diaoyu Islands but cannot defend own land. Supporters of the Chinese Communist Party, often referred to as Little Pinks, regularly experience harsh treatment under the regime's stringent control. A notable incident recently occurred involving a man from Baoding, Hebei, who has actively participated in the Defending Diaoyu Islands, or also called Senkaku Islands, movement for several years. This individual made headlines when he resorted to fasting and released a distressing video pleading for help after his homestead land was forcefully taken over. In detail, on June 27, a Weibo user known as Tao Wangchang made a solemn declaration. He clarified that he began his involvement in the Defending Diaoyu Islands movement in 2003 and has been a committed member ever since. He also mentioned his long-standing collaboration with Yu Jianrong, a Chinese sociologist, spanning 15 years, focusing on public welfare initiatives, including the establishment of over 100 rural libraries across various locations. Tao Wangchang reported that on the same day, June 27, he confronted individuals attempting to construct a wall on his property. Despite his efforts to intervene, he ended up being detained and questioned at a local police station. Following this incident, he vowed to continue his protest through fasting, expressing hope for a definitive response from the authorities. He further disclosed that back in 1994, to facilitate a road widening project, authorities had appropriated 7 street-facing commercial spaces owned by his family, compensating them for none of the 393.55 square meters used. On June 28, Tao Wangchang uploaded a document stamped by the Diaoyu Community Neighborhood Committee, Jinhua Subdistrict, Gaoyang County. Following a conversation with a friend, he announced a change of heart about his fasting, stating, "I'm not fasting anymore, it's meaningless. Let me wait a few more days. It's been 30 years. Can I hold on for a few more days?" They have the ability to delete posts. Let them delete. In a widely shared video, the emotional little pink lamented, "They have bullied me to the point where I can no longer bear it. I don't want to die, but they are pushing me towards death. I don't know why, they just want to drive me to death." In response to this situation, some netizens on Weibo ridiculed the man's inability to defend his own land while claiming to defend the Diaoyu Islands. Additional comments from netizens included, "What a cold joke, the territory you swear to defend doesn't even include a part for you." A comment from a user on Platform X stated that suffering matches awareness, the present retribution of the little pink supporters. It proves that the CCP has always been creating various enemies for the Chinese people, to prevent them from realizing that the Communist Party nearby is the real enemy. According to Wikipedia, the Defend the Diaoyu Islands movement originated in 1970 as a series of civil movements by mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, in reaction to Japan's claims over the sovereignty of the Diaoyu Islands. The actions taken include protests, demonstrations, voyages to the Diaoyu Islands and its adjacent islands, and landing on the Diaoyu Islands to declare sovereignty. The CCP has recently started targeting farmers' homestead lands. Since May, various local governments in China have been offering subsidies and housing purchase incentives to persuade farmers to surrender their homestead lands and purchase homes in urban areas. This initiative was so significant that it reached the top of the hot search list on Weibo. A netizen commented, "The leeks are all cut, now they're starting to dig up the roots. Houses are unsellable now, they can only fool us farmers. Capitalism is just too evil, completely inhumane. Asking us farmers to give up our rural homestead lands is like cutting off the roots of future generations. This is making us farmers have no place to live permanently, turning us into eternal slaves." Economic commentator Fang Yuan, who is well versed in China's economic conditions, told Radio Free Asia that the targeting of farmers by local governments to salvage the real estate industry underscores the desperate state of the real estate sector. He noted that the strategy of reclaiming homestead lands to boost the housing market is likely destined to fail. Who will rescue 1.4 billion hostages in Communist China? The pressure is mounting in China. That is the sad reality for 1.4 billion Chinese citizens who never chose the Chinese Communist Party to rule over them, threaten other countries in their name, control what they produce, or channel their speech to mimic Xi Jinping thought, what some professionals call the Stockholm Syndrome, the kind of admiration for a hostage taker. This analysis was provided by Anders Kaur, who holds a doctorate in government from Harvard University, in an article titled "Who Will Rescue 1.4 Billion Hostages in Communist China," published in the Epoch Times on June 29. According to Anders Kaur, Xi Jinping and the CCP leaders who preceded him are forcing 1.4 billion Chinese citizens down the path to conflict, including against the United States, Europe, Japan, Australia, Taiwan, and the Philippines. As the world is waking to a war that looms ever closer, business is pulling away from China in fear. Chinese citizens reliant on censored media appear unaware of the dangers that lurk. They need only to pull back the veil and look at Ukraine or Gaza to understand a bit of the far worse that could befall them. Already, some Chinese citizens are escaping, international business has stopped major investments in China, supply chains are getting cut, and with them, jobs in China are being lost. What Chinese jobs remain are getting harder. Even in the best of them, as found in the tech industry that includes Pinduoduo, ByteDance, JD.com, Tencent, and Alibaba, for example, workers are getting pressured into longer hours to the point that they sometimes sleep at their desks. The infamous 996 requirement of tech workers is that they must work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Little is left for friends and family. The 996 schedule is coming back after a brief hiatus. The Chinese tech industry has lost $1.3 trillion in market value since 2021, so it's trying to make up lost ground by squeezing workers ever harder and extracting ever smaller drops of diminishing productivity. The pressure of propaganda is also increasing. A rise in the Chinese population's anti-American sentiment is being pushed by the regime, causing an unwelcome atmosphere for Americans in China. In the worst of recent incidents, a man stabbed 4 Iowa college teachers with a knife in a park in northeastern China. The U.S. ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, implied the park attack could result from anti-American sentiment. Bloomberg cited a broader uptick of violence in China as the result of economic anxiety. Sadly, the regime's missteps are fueling the very violence and anti-American sentiment that helps push the decoupling it calls a vicious cycle. This irrationality is part of being a dictatorship. Due to fear among Xi's subordinates, they cannot tell him the inconvenient truths that contradict what he wants to hear. This leads to a dangerously blind irrationality of the all-powerful totalitarian state, such as claiming to want more engagement and business with the United States while following policies that not only purposefully limit the same but court what would be a globally disastrous war. The CCP claims that Taiwan and the South China Sea are part of China while threatening to invade what it believes is its own territory. In the case of the South China Sea, Beijing is clearly violating international law and its own supposedly egalitarian principles. To what end are Chinese citizens being commanded to follow both irrational and self-defeating policies that contribute to the vicious cycle of deteriorating U.S.-China, China-Taiwan, and China-ASEAN relations to the point of becoming a pariah state like North Korea and risking nuclear war? So that Xi can maintain the nationalistic fervor necessary to undergird an invasion of Taiwan or increase his control of the South China Sea? So that he can establish his name in the history books as more than a footnote and justify his tenure as emperor for life? What will this get the Chinese people besides war, sanctions, poverty, misery, and regret? Absolutely nothing. This is what makes Xi's policies so irrational or worse. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te noted on June 24 that democracy is not a crime, it's autocracy that is the real evil. President Lai is being threatened by Beijing with the death penalty as a separatist for daring to speak the truth. Taiwan is better off independent than subject to the insanity of the CCP. The regime is ignoring persistent U.S. and allied attempts to show restraint and de-escalate. Does she not understand that war in the nuclear age is unspeakable and unwinnable? Does he believe he can bluff his way to a quick victory over Taipei? Vladimir Putin's attempt to do so in Ukraine is failing. Even if he does eventually capture Kiev, it will have been destroyed in the process. Russian occupiers will be attacked from the countryside. The future of Russia and Ukraine, its youth, will continue to be killed on their battlefields or flee their countries in disgrace. Putin will be left with the ruins of 2 once fledgling democracies, turned against each other, and their millions of old, infirm, and wounded on the rolls of his bereft social services and historical legacy. The same will apply to China and Taiwan if Xi Jinping ever invades. Territorial expansion in the 20th and 21st centuries has proven disastrous, as have the leaders who misdirected their citizens toward destruction. Anders Core concluded, as anti-China sentiment rises around the world, it is worth taking a moment to remember that the biggest victims of the CCP are the Chinese people themselves, captured by a regime that does not have their best interests at heart. Who can rescue those 1.4 billion hostages? Who, but themselves, before the deluge? World's largest naval exercise commences, targeting the CCP. On June 27, the United States, along with 28 allied countries, initiated the largest naval exercise in the world, known as the Rim of the Pacific Military Exercise, RIMPAC, in the waters near Hawaii. Voice of America reports that this year's RIMPAC has reached an unprecedented level of international cooperation, involving 40 surface ships, over 150 aircraft, 3 submarines, and 25,000 personnel. Most of the nations participating have shorelines along the Pacific Ocean. However, this year's exercise also includes countries without Pacific coastlines, such as the United Kingdom, France, Brazil, and Israel. Notably, China was not invited to participate. Marcus Garlauskas, the director of the Indo-Pacific Security Initiative at the Atlantic Council, remarked that these countries are united by a common goal to deter and counteract the CCP's threats to the freedom and openness of the Indo-Pacific region. Garlauskas noted that the CCP was invited to RIMPAC in 2014 and 2016, but exploited those opportunities for its own benefit, which led to feelings of deception among the United States and its allies. He explained that China used these exercises as a chance to collect intelligence. Following those events, the CCP has constructed more artificial islands in international waters and militarized them. Recently, the CCP has been particularly aggressive in its military maneuvers near Taiwan and has once again used water cannons to attack Philippine vessels in the past few days. Officials emphasized that the biennial RIMPAC exercise is intended to convey a strong message to the CCP, pressing Beijing to halt its aggressive behavior towards its neighbors. This year, Israel's participation in the exercises has led to protests from pro-Palestinian activists, who urge nations to abstain from such military engagements. In response, the Prime Minister of Malaysia addressed the protesters before the exercise, stating that although Malaysia will persist in its support for the Palestinian people, it must act in a manner not driven by anger and consider the real consequences of avoiding participation in major military exercises. The RIMPAC exercise is scheduled to end in early August. Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.